The ceasefire in West Asia is under severe strain as Israel carries out its most intense strikes on the Lebanon since the war began, now reportedly killing 182 people and injuring 900. Israel maintains it is targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, but Lebanon and several global powers say civilians have borne the brunt. The core dispute now is whether Lebanon is part of the US-Iran ceasefire framework or not. While Iran and Pakistan insist it is included, Israel and United States say operations against Hezbollah remain outside the deal. At the same time, the Strait of Hormuz is seeing a sharp drop in vessel traffic, raising concerns of a wider economic impact. The question is whether the ceasefire is already beginning to unravel. Israel is signaling that its campaign against Hezbollah will continue irrespective of diplomatic arrangements. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that the strikes will persist until northern Israel is secure. The Israeli military says it is targeting operational logistical nodes of Hezbollah, but the scale and the speed of the attacks have intensified scrutiny over civilian impact. The consequences of the Lebanon strikes are now extending into global trade routes. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical artery for the global oil shipments, has seen a dramatic slowdown in vessel movement. Iran claims the disruption is a direct result of what I call a violation of the ceasefire, while the United States maintains that the maritime security will be ensured. Global reactions have been swift, with multiple countries warning that the scale of Israeli strikes risk pushing the region into deeper instability. Several leaders have called for restraint and for Lebanon to be included within the ceasefire framework to prevent further escalation. At the center of the crisis is a lack of clarity over the ceasefire terms. On this issue, I'm joined by L.A. Peish, Director International Relations. He joins me from Israel, and Major General Sudhakarji. Thank you so much. Let me straight away go to LA. I hope you are doing fine in Israel. And my question to you, LA, is that does Lebanon hold the potential to derail the peace process, if I may use the word, because it's a ceasefire?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I would say it's not to Lebanon, it's Iran. Iran is trying to establish a ceasefire for its proxy, but without discussing it with Israel. Iran doesn't recognize Israel. It's very rich for Iran to say, I won't talk to Israel because it doesn't exist. You want Israel not to go ahead and defend itself against Hezbollah, which its only purpose is to destroy Israel. Hezbollah does not have a civilian purpose. It does civilian acts to embed itself into Lebanese society. But the reality is the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army is trying to extricate itself from Hezbollah, and Israel has no option. But Israel is not going to stop attacking Hezbollah because Hezbollah wants to destroy us. As simple as that.
So it means that the operations are going to continue even across the Litani River?
Yes, it will mean as long as Hezbollah is trying. Hezbollah is supposed to be disarming. They're not disarming. Hezbollah is continuing to try to attack Israel. Israel will do whatever it takes in order to protect itself. And frankly, at the same time, the benefit is that it will be freeing Lebanon, a country that's been taken over by this Iranian proxy. Israel's actions, when it is able to sufficiently degrade Hezbollah, will allow Lebanon to take matters into its own hands. Okay. We wish Lebanon would do more. But Lebanon right now is not willing to do more, not able to do more. That can be debated. But until that happens, Lebanon won't be free and Israel won't be free.
Okay, so General Sudhakarji, how is that going to happen? There are two questions to you, sir. Then before I go to LA again, one, who decides when Hezbollah is completely dismantled? And secondly, if I'm not wrong, Hezbollah is also part of the political structure. So how do you resolve that? Within Lebanon, they're also part of the political structure. They're not like LET, They're part of the political process. So then how do you meander this?
Okay. Firstly, thank you. Thank you, Karthikeya. You have too little time for a very important subject. I must, at the outset...
I'll make up for it, sir.
You see, I must compliment Ali for being straightforward and he's spoken his heart out. Because when you look at these two questions you have raised for me, if I have to respond from Israeli side, whatever Israel is doing, they're justified in self-defense. They're doing it for the survival, for the safety and the security of their people in northern Israel. But having covered that, you have raised two questions as far as the disarmament of or disarming the Hezbollah. Ideally speaking, there is something desirable and something which is realistic. Desirable is that they should disarm. As per the ceasefire agreement, which has come into effect, if I respect my memory, from November 2024. From November 2024, there are n number of ceasefire violations which have taken place from both the sides, Israelis as also Hezbollah. That is one part. I would say we should be realistic and be prepared to address the issue from the long-term perspective and divide our course of action into short term, that is, contain the situation, then counter the situation, and find out a long lasting peace solution. How I'm sure it is happening on ground, but the central victim, I would say, the biggest victim in the entire case is lack of trust. Neither Hezbollah is trusting. When I talk about Hezbollah, it is part of Iran. He's right. I totally agree with what Mr. Elias said. It is part of Iran. If Hezbollah is being attacked, Iran is being attacked. That's why Iran is going to make noise. So, therefore, a holistic kind of a picture has to be adopted, and then only we can find out. Because if you look at a small cog in the wheel, and ignore the entire wheel, then you will be missing the larger picture, which is actually the absence of peace in the entire Middle East. And if you look at things in isolation. Second issue is that you are talking about the Hezbollah as the political process. No, please correct me if I am wrong. To the best of my understanding and research, Hezbollah is a militant organization. There is no political dispensation or entitlement given to Hezbollah, whereas Hamas do have some identity of political.
But that too is a terrorist organization.
Hamas is yet to be declared by United Nations as a terrorist organization, but Hezbollah is. Hezbollah is the most dangerous terrorist organization in the world. It is worse than LTTE. They're so formidable, they're so powerful. Please correct me, Mr. Ali, if I am wrong. But having said that, let me give as a solution provider, what is the solution? The solution is that there is already a ceasefire in place as far as Lebanon, Hezbollah is concerned. Now, as per the ceasefire, the Hezbollah was supposed to have pulled back from north of Litani River back into the deft areas, and the Lebanese army or the security apparatus is supposed to have come onto the banks of Litani River to occupy. I only have raised a question through my channel that why is Hezbollah been allowed to occupy the defenses which is rightfully supposed to be taken care of by the security forces of the Lebanon. That means Lebanon willy-nilly have accepted Hezbollah as part and parcel. They are not part and parcel of Lebanon. They have an identity as an entity belonging to Iran.
Actually, that's what I meant, sir. That's what I meant. That, you know, they are accepted within the political structure.
Yeah, Kartika, one more line. Be mindful of the fact every year Iran provides something to the tune of $2 billion. $2 billion for their sustenance. It goes from Iran. You can check it up, Google it up, and that comes from the oil money. That's it. Therefore, their lane is more towards the Iran than the Lebanon. They may be operating by virtue of the Shiite dominance and the sphere of influence, but you cannot call them as a political party or a dispensation with identity.
No, I didn't mean political party. I meant in form of a stakeholder where they have public presence in forms of rallies, in forms of, you know, gathering of people, not in terms of not in form of a political party, but in form of people who are accepted as overground workers, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I grant that. Eli is there to correct us.
That was the reference, you know, not as in terms of people who are just fighting election, but people who can be seen on the street and be accepted as what they are. So, Eli, there is no divergence on the point that Hezbollah is not a terrorist. It's a terrorist organization. It's funded by Iran. It causes great damage to the state of Israel. It doesn't accept the state of Israel. But the question here is that what about the larger piece? Because the impact of that is affecting the entire world.
It is. It is affecting the entire world. And this is something that I think is now becoming clear. And let's go back to Iran before we go to Lebanon. I think it'll be easier to see it that way. Many Gulf countries flirted with Iran, engaged with Iran, toyed with Iran. We're friendly with Iran. But what ended up happening? When push came to shove, Iran unleashed on them. And now it's become clear to them that they were making a deal with the devil, and they got burnt. Lebanon has made a deal with the Hezbollah devil for a very long time. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. to extricate themselves, but that's something that needs to be done. In a post-October 7th environment, Israel is no longer tolerating to have threats on our border that at any moment they could go and attack us. Israel is taking the initiative and is removing them, which in this case has the benefit of freeing and being beneficial to Lebanon. They are not saying it out loud yet, but we are getting very clear communication that Lebanon wants that to happen. They want to be free, but they are scared about the process because it will be painful and will be difficult.
A lot of critics say that it's creating a sort of a greater Israel in terms of buffer. You have a buffer in Syria, you have a buffer in Lebanon now, you have a buffer in Gaza. The boundaries have expanded. Is that correct or misguided?
I would say our boundaries are not expanding. We are just we have allowed our enemies to gather on our borders for so long, and now, after October 7th, we can no longer ignore and pretend that they are not going to use it. Those threats are no longer tolerable. When, the international community has kind of acknowledged, or basically by their actions, we understand that Iran was under attack from the US and from Israel. They had no choice, so they closed the Strait of Hormuz. The international community needs to understand the same thing with Israel. We have been under attack. Iran has orchestrated the sphere as axis of fire around us to try to collapse us, and we are now reacting in the same way. And if the goal is to try to create stability, then it is to allow Israel and other countries to work with Israel to eliminate these threats, and then we will no longer be in a situation where we have to be fighting on all of our borders.
I'll take closing comment from General Sudhakar ji. Sir, are we looking at renewed escalation?
Absolutely, spot on. This ceasefire is meaningless. Why? I'll tell you why. You see, great things have happened. Sorry, without meaning to contradict our Mr. Eli, he's a very distinguished personality, whatever little I know him. It is to be understood from the real perspective. Till 28th of February 2026, there was a buffer zone. That is south of Litani River, as also north of buffer zone north of Litani River. The space which was earlier occupied by the Hezbollah had been vacated by Hezbollah, and they used to be occupied by the security forces of Lebanon, as per my research and understanding. The same places have been reoccupied by the Hezbollah after the bombing took place on 28th of February, therefore demanding or necessitating the induction and deployment and operations by the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, so as to push them back, because the firing range of the weapon systems which Hezbollah is using north of Litani River is actually engaging the targets across the Litani River, as also crossing places towards Israel, and thereby displacing the local inhabitants of northern Israel to lots of places, as had happened prior to 7th October after 7th October 2023. That is all I have to say.
Okay, thank you both of you for joining me.